Tell me if this sounds familiar. You're sitting at home, just kind of vibing, when all of a sudden you have this amazing idea. Either it be for a book, a comic, or even some music. So you stop what you're doing, you rush over to your workspace, and sit down excited to bring this new amazing idea to life, when suddenly you think, oh crap, I still haven't finished that one project I was working on last week. Come to think of it, wasn't that project already an excuse to take a break from the other project before that? Hang on, I haven't even touched my magnum opus I've been developing since middle school. I really should buckle down and work on that. You know what? I have a weekend free. I think I'll just work on all of them at the same time. I am so smart. And then you explode, throw up, and die? Yeah, me too. I made a more somber video a while back, just kind of talking about how overwhelming the world is right now, which makes it really hard to get any joy out of creating. And one sentiment that stood out to me in the comments of that video was the feeling of not only being overwhelmed with the world, but overwhelmed with having so many ideas and not knowing which one to commit time to. And this really hit home for me, so I wanted to take a minute to really talk about it. Now, disclaimer, I'm not diagnosed with ADHD, nor do I think I have it. I'm very good when it comes to remembering tasks, I can sit still for long periods of time, and I'm pretty good about managing a handful of projects. So with that being said, please keep in mind this whole video is coming from the perspective of someone who doesn't have to deal with any of that. I do not know your experience, but I do know a thing or two about feeling like you are constantly running out of time. I remember a point in my life when I would blissfully allow myself to come up with new and exciting stories on the daily. Any free moment I had in school was dedicated to writing things down as if I was going to turn them into a book or a movie one day. It definitely helped that I had a creative writing class that gave me a really good outlet for all of those ideas, but then I became an adult and suddenly it felt like I wasn't allowed that freedom anymore. Unless of course I could monetize off of it, which I recognize is a very American mindset. So needless to say, I suddenly became eerily aware of the passage of time and began to feel like I needed to organize my free time, meaning I had to be really picky with how much daydreaming, writing, and art I did. So when I started getting restless about how many ideas I felt like I needed to manage, the natural question arose: do I have too many ideas? And the answer? Yes and no. Now obviously everyone is different, so please take this insight with a grain of salt, but this is just how I've started to feel about my own situation. When I was younger, I just assumed that every idea I ever had, I would be able to make it happen one day. Every cool history lesson I learned in school, it was going to turn into a badass movie. Or every creative writing assignment I did was going to become a bestseller. Eventually you get to that depressing age when you actually start to work on these things and realize, man, this takes a lot of time. I will never have enough time in my life to do everything I want to do. And that thought alone can easily trigger an existential crisis. But before we all start panicking, let me give you a bit of a silver lining. Just because you probably won't be able to do every single idea you have, doesn't make them any less important. You shouldn't be afraid to give them the respect and time they deserve, even if that just means quickly jotting them down in a journal. Every idea you have is a part of your creative expression and can be a part of a greater picture. Some characters from a project you did in elementary school might fit perfectly into a short film that you're creating as an adult. A plot twist you were super proud of in a sci-fi murder mystery might actually work better in a Western idea you came up with last week. I get that the passage of time is scary, and sometimes it feels like everything you enjoy doing is a huge waste of time. I remember a video my school showed us when I was maybe a junior that messed me up so bad. Essentially, the premise was there was a person with a bunch of M&Ms, and each M&M represented the average amount of days in a person's life. It was a huge amount, but slowly they started taking some away, saying, this is how much time you'll spend sleeping, and this is how much time you'll be in school, and it just kept going and going and going until there was a shockingly less amount of M&Ms. And then it prompted the question, what are you gonna do with your life? And I have one thing to say to whoever thought that was a good idea to show students trapped in school. You. That video messed me up so bad and still messes with me to this day. You're not allowed to show me that video highlighting how little time I have and then say, okay, time to go to your next mandatory class. This day's one of those precious M&Ms we're stealing from you. It instilled the biggest fear in me, and I guess that was probably the point, to give you the drive to do what you want to do with your life. But man, I bet you weren't expecting 2 of those years to be scooped up by COVID, huh? The point I'm trying to make is, yeah, the passage of time is terrifying, especially when you feel like you're already falling behind. And while I believe that there is a good side to hustle culture, there's also a really bad side that I think this newer generation is starting to really feel, especially when it comes to feeling like you have to pick and choose how you spend your free time. At the end of the day, you shouldn't guilt yourself out of exploring a new idea if you feel like it might be good. I mean, if anyone here doesn't know the story of how Spider-Man came to be, I highly suggest you look that up after finishing this video. Don't put restraints on yourself just because you feel like you need to commit to a bigger and better picture. Yes, ambition is good, but not at the cost of your mental well-being and creative drive. Finding a healthy balance is really important, and that's kind of where I am right now. I was working on a movie in the background of all my animatic stuff before completely hitting a wall because I realized I was starting to feel more passionate about this other idea I had, and neither of them were the webcomic I promised my 14-year-old self I would get turned into a TV show by now. Having a dream is good, and you shouldn't flat out give up on them, but don't drive yourself crazy trying to chase them 24/7. Maybe taking a break to stop and smell the flowers might end up being just what you need to keep going.